The Outsiders, Day 8. I was silent most of the way home. I was thinking about the rumble. I had a sick feeling in my stomach, and it wasn't from being ill. It was the same kind of helplessness I had felt that night Derry yelled at me for going to sleep in the lot. I had the same deathly fear that something was going to happen that none of us could stop. As we got off the bus, I finally said it. Tonight? I don't like it one bit. Two-Bit pretended not to understand. I never knew you to play chicken in a rumble before, not even when you was a little kid. I knew he was trying to make me mad, but I took the bait anyway. I ain't chicken, Two-Bit Matthews, and you know it, I said angrily. Ain't I a Curtis, same as Soda and Derry? Two-Bit couldn't deny this, so I went on. I got an awful feeling something's going to happen. Something is going to happen. We're going to stomp the Socia's guts, that's what. Two-Bit knew what I meant, but doggedly pretended not to. He seemed to feel that if you said something was all right, it immediately was, no matter what. He'd been that way all his life, and I don't expect he'll change. Soda Pop would have understood, and we would have tried to figure out it together. But Two-Bit just ain't Soda, not by a long shot. Cherry Valance was sitting in her Corvette by the vacant lot when we came by. Her long hair was pinned up, and in daylight she was even better looking. That Stingray was one tough car, a bright red one. It was cool. Hi, Pony Boy, she said. Hi, Two-Bit. Two-Bit stopped. Apparently Cherry had shown up there before during the week Johnny and I had spent in Windricksville. What's up with the big times? She tightened the strings on her ski jacket. They play your way. No weapons. Fair deal. Your rules. You sure? She nodded. Randy told me. He knows for sure. Two-Bit turned and started home. Thanks, Cherry. Pony Boy, stay a minute, Cherry said. I stopped and went back to her car. Randy's not going to show up at the rumble. Yeah, I said. I know. He's not scared. He's just sick of fighting. Bob... She swallowed, then went on quietly. Bob was his best buddy, since grade school. I thought of Soda and Steve. What if one of them saw the other killed? Would that make them stop fighting? No, I thought. Maybe it would make Soda stop, but not Steve. He'd go on hating and fighting. Maybe that was what Bob would have done, if it had been Randy instead of him. How's Johnny? Not so good, I said. Will you go up to see him? She shook her head. No, I couldn't. Why not? I demanded. It was the least she could do. It was her boyfriend who had caused it all, and then I stopped. Her boyfriend. I couldn't, she said in a quiet, desperate voice. He killed Bob. Oh, maybe Bob asked for it. I know he did. But I couldn't ever look at the person who killed him. You only knew his bad side. He could be sweet sometimes, and friendly, but when he got drunk. It was that part of him that beat up Johnny. I knew it was Bob when you told me the story. He was so proud of his rings. Why do people sell liquor to boys? Why? I know there's a law against it, but kids get it anyway. I can't go see Johnny. I know I'm too young to be in love and all that, but Bob was something special. He wasn't just any boy. He had something that made people follow him, something that marked him different, maybe a little better than the crowd. Do you know what I mean? I did. Cherry saw the same things in Dallas. That was why she was afraid to see him, afraid of loving him. I knew what she meant all right, but she also meant she wouldn't go see Johnny because he had killed Bob. That's okay, I said sharply. It wasn't Johnny's fault Bob was a booze hound and Cherry went for boys who were bound for trouble. I wouldn't want you to see him. You're a traitor to your own kind and not loyal to us. Do you think your spying for us makes up for the fact that you're sitting there in a Corvette while my brother drops out of school to get a job? Don't you ever feel sorry for us? Don't you ever try to give us handouts and then feel high and mighty about it? I started to turn and walk off, but something in Cherry's face made me stop. I was ashamed. I can't stand to see girls cry. She wasn't crying, but she was close to it. I wasn't trying to give you charity, Pony Boy. I only wanted to help. I liked you from the start, the way you talked. You're a nice kid, Pony Boy. Do you realize how scarce nice kids are nowadays? Wouldn't you try to help me if you could? I would. I'd help her and Randy both if I could. Hey, I said suddenly, can you see the sunset real good from the west side? She blinked, startled, then smiled. Real good. You can see it good from the east side, too, I said quietly. Thanks, Pony Boy. She smiled through her tears. You dig okay. She had green eyes. I went on, walking home, slowly. Chapter 9. It was almost 6:30 when I got home. The rumble was set for 7, so I was late for supper as usual. I always come in late. I forget what time it is. Derry had cooked dinner, baked chicken and potatoes and corn, 2 chickens, because all 3 of us eat like horses, especially Derry. But although I love baked chicken, I could hardly swallow any. I swallowed 5 aspirins, though, when Derry and Soda weren't looking. I do that all the time because I can't sleep very well at night. Derry thinks I take just 1, but I usually take 4. I figured 5 would keep me going through the rumble and maybe get rid of my headache. Then I hurried to take a shower and change clothes. Me and Soda and Derry always got spruced up before a rumble. And besides, we wanted to show those Socias we weren't trash. that we were just as good as they were. "Soda," I called from the bathroom, "when did you start shaving?" "When I was 15, he yelled back. "When did Derry?" "When he was 13. Why, you figuring on growing a beard for the Rumble?" "You're funny. We got to send you to the Reader's Digest. I hear they pay a lot for funny things." Soda laughed and went right on playing poker with Steve in the living room. Derry had on a tight black t-shirt that showed every muscle on his chest and even the flat, hard muscles of his stomach. I'd hate to be the Soch who takes a crack at him, I thought as I pulled on a clean t-shirt and a fresh pair of jeans. I wish my t-shirt was tighter. I have a pretty good build for my size, but I'd lost a lot of weight in Windricksville, and it just didn't fit right. It was a chilly night, and t-shirts aren't the warmest clothes in the world, but nobody ever gets cold in the Rumble, and besides, jackets interfere with your swinging ability. Soda and Steve and I had put on more hair oil than was necessary, but we wanted to show that we were greasers. Tonight we could be proud of it. Greasers may not have much, but they have a rep. That and long hair. What kind of world is it where all I have to be proud of is a reputation for being a hood and greasy hair? I don't want to be a hood, but even if I don't steal things and mug people and get boozed up, I'm marked lousy. Why should I be proud of it? Why should I even pretend to be proud of it? Derry never went in for the long hair. His was short and clean all the time. I sat in the armchair in the living room, waiting for the rest of the outfit to show up. But of course tonight, the only one coming would be Two-Bit. Johnny and Dallas wouldn't show. Soda and Steve were playing cards and arguing as usual. Soda was keeping up a steady stream of wisecracks and clowning, and Steve had turned up the radio so loud that it almost broke my eardrums. Of course everybody listens to it loud like that, but it wasn't just the best thing for a headache. "You like fights, don't you, Soda?" I asked suddenly. "Yeah, sure," he shrugged. "I like fights." "How come?" "I don't know." He looked at me, puzzled. "It's action. It's a contest, like a drag race or a dance or something." "Shoot," said Steve. "I want to beat those Soch's heads in. When I get in a fight, I want to stomp the other guy good. I like it, too." "How come you like fights, Derry?" I asked, looking up at him as he stood behind me, leaning in the kitchen doorway. He gave me one of those looks that hide what he's thinking, but Soda piped up. "He likes to show off his muscles." "I'm going to show 'em off on you, little buddy, if you get any mouthier." I digested what Soda had said. It was the truth. Derry liked anything that took strength, like weightlifting, or playing football, or roofing houses, even if he was proud of being smart, too. Derry never said anything about it, but I knew he liked fights. I felt out things. I'll fight anyone anytime, but I don't like to. "I don't know if you ought to be in this Rumble, Pony," Derry said slowly. "Oh no," I thought in a mortal fear. "I've got to be in it." Right then, the most important thing in my life was helping us whip the Soches. Don't let him make me stay home. I've got to be in it. How come? I've always come through before, ain't I? "Yeah," Derry said with a proud grin. "You fight real good for a kid your size. But you were in shape before. You've lost weight, and you don't look so great, kid. You're tensed up too much." "Shoot," said Soda, trying to get the ace out of his shoe without Steve seeing him. "We all get tensed up before a Rumble. Let him fight tonight. Skin never hurt anyone. No weapons. No danger." "I'll be okay," I pleaded. "I'll get a hold of a little one, okay?" "Well, Johnny won't be there this time. Johnny and I sometimes ganged up on one big guy, but then Curly Shepherd won't be there either, or Dally, and we'll need every man we can get." "What happened to Shepherd?" I asked, remembering Tim Shepherd's kid brother. Curly, who was a tough, cool, hard as nails, Tim in miniature, and I had once played chicken by holding our cigarette ends against each other's fingers. We had stood there, clenching our teeth and grimacing, with sweat pouring down our faces and the smell of burning flesh making us sick, each refusing to holler until Tim happened to stroll by. When he saw that we were really burning holes in each other, he cracked our heads together, swearing to kill us both if we ever pulled a stunt like that again. I still have the scar on my forefinger. Curly was an average downtown hood, tough and not real bright, but I liked him. He could take anything. "He's in the cooler," Steve said, kicking the ace out of Soda's shoe. "In the reformatory." "Again?" I thought, and said, "Let me fight, Derry. If it was blades or chains or something, it'd be different. Nobody ever really gets really hurt in a skin rumble." "Well," Derry gave in, "I guess you can. But be careful, and if you get in a jam, holler, and I'll get you out." "I'll be okay," I said wearily. "How come you never worry about Soda Pop as much? I don't see you lecturing him." "Man," Derry grinned and put his arm across Soda's shoulders. "This is one kid brother I don't have to worry about." Soda punched him in the ribs affectionately. "This kiddo can use his head." Soda Pop looked down at me with mock superiority, but Derry went on. "You can see he uses it for one thing, to grow hair on." He ducked Soda's swing and took off for the door. Two-Bit stuck his head in the door just as Derry went flying out of it. Leaping as he went off the steps, Derry turned a somersault in midair, hit the ground, and bounced up before Soda could catch him. "Well up," Two-Bit said cheerfully, cocking an eyebrow. "I see we are in prime condition for a Rumble. Is everybody happy?" "Yeah!" screamed Soda as he, too, did a flying somersault off the steps. He flipped up to walk on his hands and then did a no-hands cartwheel across the yard to beat Derry's performance. The excitement was catching. Screeching like an Indian, Steve went running across the lawn in flying leaps, stopped suddenly, and flipped backward. We could all do acrobatics because Derry had taken a course at the Y and then spent the whole summer teaching us everything he'd learned on the grounds that it might come in handy in a fight. It did, but it also got Two-Bit and Soda jailed once. They were doing mid-air flips down a downtown sidewalk, walking on their hands and otherwise disturbing the public and the police. Leave it to those two to pull something like that. With a happy whoop, I did a no-hands cartwheel off the porch steps, hit the ground, and rolled to my feet. Two-Bit followed me in a similar manner. "I'm a greaser," Soda Pop chanted. "I am a J.D. and a hood. I blacken the name of our fair city. I beat up people. I rob gas stations. I'm a menace to society. Man, do I have fun." "Greaser, greaser, greaser," Steve sing-songed. "Oh, victim of environment, underprivileged, rotten, no-count hood. Juvenile delinquent, you're no good," Derry shouted. "Get thee hence, white trash," Two-Bit said in snobbish voice. "I'm a soch. I'm the privileged and the well-dressed. I throw beer blasts, drive fancy cars, break windows at fancy parties. And what do you do for fun?" I inquired in a serious, odd voice. "I jump greasers," Two-Bit screamed and did a cartwheel. We settled down as we walked to the lot. Two-Bit was the only one wearing a jacket. He had a couple of cans of beer stuffed in it. He always gets high before a rumble. Before anything else, too, come to think of it. I shook my head. I'd hate to see the day when I had to get my nerve from a can. I tried drinking once before. The stuff tasted awful. I got sick, had a headache, and when Derry found out, he grounded me for 2 weeks. But that was the last time I'd ever drink. I'd seen too much of what drinking did for you at Johnny's house. "Hey, Two-Bit," I said, deciding to complete my survey. "How come you like to fight?" He looked at me as if I was off my nut. "Shoot! Everybody fights. If everybody jumped in the Arkansas River, old Two-Bit would be right on their heels. I had it then. Soda fought for fun, Steve for hatred, Derry for pride, and Two-Bit for conformity. Why do I fight?" I thought and couldn't think of any real good reason. There isn't any real good reason for fighting except self-defense. "Listen, Soda, you and Ponyboy," Derry said as we strode down the street. "If the fuzz show, you two beat it out of there. The rest of us can only get jailed. You two can get sent to a boys' home." "Nobody in this neighborhood's going to call the fuzz," Steve said grimly. "They know what would happen if they did. All the same, you two blow at the first sign of trouble. You hear me? You sure don't need an amplifier," Soda said, and stuck out his tongue at the back of Derry's head. I stifled a giggle. If you wanted to see something funny, it's a tough hood sticking his tongue out at his big brother. Tim Shepard and company were already waiting when we arrived at the vacant lot, along with the gang from Bromley, one of the suburbs. Tim was a lean, cat-like 18-year-old who looked like the model J.D. you see in the movies and magazines. He had the right curly black hair, smoldering dark eyes, and a long scar from temple to chin where a tramp had belted him with a broken pop bottle. He had a tough, hard look to him, and his nose had been broken twice. Like Dally's, his smile was grim and bitter. He was one of those who enjoy being a hood. The rest of his bunch were the same way. The boys from Bromley, too. Young hoods who would grow up to be old hoods. I never thought about it before, but they'd just get worse as they got older, not better. I looked at Derry. He wasn't going to be any hood when he got old. He was going to get somewhere. Living the way we do only make him more determined to get somewhere. That's why he's better than the rest of us, I thought. He's going somewhere. And I was going to be like him. I wasn't going to live in a lousy neighborhood all my life. Tim had the tense, hungry look of an alley cat. That's what he's always reminded me of, an alley cat. And he was constantly restless. His boys ranged from 15 to 19, hard-looking characters who were used to the strict discipline Tim gave out. That was the difference between his gang and ours. They had a leader and were organized. We were just buddies who stuck together. Each man was his own leader. Maybe that was why we could whip them. Tim and the leader of the Bromley outfit moved forward to shake hands with each of us, proving that our gangs were on the same side in this fight, although most of the guys in the two outfits weren't exactly what I'd like to call my friends. When Tim got to me, he studied me, maybe remembering how his kid brother and I had played chicken. "You and the quiet, black-headed kid were the ones who killed that Soch?" "Yeah," I said, pretending to be proud of it. Then I thought of Cherry and Randy and got a sick feeling in my stomach. "Good going, kid. Curly's always said you were a good kid. Curly's in the reformatory for the next 6 months." Tim grinned ruefully. probably thinking of his rough-necked, hard-headed brother. He got caught breaking into a liquor store. He went on to call Curly every unprintable name under the sun, in Tim's way of thinking, terms of affection. I surveyed the scene with pride. I was the youngest one there. Even Curly, if he had been there, had turned 15, so he was older than me. I could tell Derry realized this too, and although he was proud, I also knew he was worried. Shoot, I thought. I'll fight so good this time, he won't ever worry about me again. I'll show him that someone besides Soda Pop can use his head. One of the Bromley guys waved me over. We mostly stuck with our own outfits, so I was a little leery of going over to him, but I shrugged. He asked to borrow weed, then lit up. That big guy with y'all. You know him pretty well? I ought to. He's my brother, I said. I couldn't honestly say yes. I knew Derry as well as he knew me, and that isn't saying a whole lot. No kidding. I got a feeling he's going to be asked to start the fireworks around here. He's a pretty good bopper? He meant rumbler. Those Bromley boys have weird vocabularies. I doubt if half of them can read a newspaper or spell much more than their names, and it comes out in their speech. I mean, you take a guy that calls a rumble bop action, and you can tell he isn't real educated. Yep, I said. But why him? He shrugged. Why anybody else? I looked at our outfits over. Most greasers don't have real tough builds or anything. They're mostly lean and kind of panther-looking in a slouchy way. This is partly because they don't eat much and partly because they're slouchy. Derry looked like he could whip anyone there. I think most of the guys were nervous because of the no weapons rule. I didn't know about the Bromley boys, but I knew the Shepherd's gang were used to fighting with anything they could get their hands on. Bicycle chains, blades, pop bottles, pieces of pipe, pool sticks, or even, sometimes, heaters. I mean guns. I have a kind of lousy vocabulary too, even if I am educated. Our gang never went in for weapons. We're just not that rough. The only weapons we ever used were knives and shoot. We carried them mostly just for looks. Like Two-Bit with his black-handled switch. None of us had ever really hurt anybody, or wanted to. Just Johnny. And he hadn't wanted to. Hey, Curtis, Tim yelled. I jumped. Which one? I heard Soda yell back. The big one. Come on over here. The guy from the Bromley looked at me. What did I tell you? I watched Derry going toward Tim, and the leader of the Bromley boys. He shouldn't be here, I thought suddenly. I shouldn't be here, and Steve shouldn't be here, and Soda shouldn't be here, and Two-Bit shouldn't be here. We're greasers, but not hoods, and we don't belong with this bunch of future convicts. We could end up like them, I thought. We could, and the thought didn't help my headache. I went back to stand with Soda and Steve and Two-Bit then, because the Socias were arriving, right on time. They came in 4 carloads and filed out silently. I counted 22 of them. There were 20 of us, so I figured the odds were as even as we could get them. Derry always liked to take on 2 at a time anyway. They looked like they were all cut from the same piece of cloth, clean-shaven, with semi-beetle haircuts, wearing striped or checkered shirts with light red or tan-colored jackets, or Madras ski jackets. They could just as easily have been going to the movies as to a rumble. That's why people don't ever think to blame the Socias, and are always ready to jump on us. We look hoody, and they look decent. It could just be the other way around. Half of the hoods I know are pretty decent guys underneath all that grease. And from what I've heard, a lot of Socias are just as cold-blooded and mean. But people usually go by looks. They lined up silently, facing us, and we lined up facing them. I looked for Randy, but didn't see him. I hoped he wasn't there. A guy with a Madras shirt stepped up. Let's get the rules straight. Nothing but our fists, and the first to run, lose. Right? Tim flipped away his beer can. You savvy real good. There was an uneasy silence. Who was going to start it? Derry solved the problem. He stepped forward, under the circle of light made by the street lamp. For a minute, everything looked unreal, like a scene out of a J.D. movie or something. Then Derry said, I'll take on anyone. He stood there tall, broad-shouldered, his muscles taut under his T-shirt and his eyes glittering like ice. For a second, it looked like there wasn't anyone brave enough to take him on. Then there was a slight stir in the faceless mob of Socias, and a husky blond guy stepped forward. He looked at Derry and said quietly, Hello, Darrell. Something flickered behind Derry's eyes, and then they were ice again. Hello, Paul. I heard Soda give a kind of squeak, and I realized that the blond was Paul Holden. He had been the best halfback on Derry's football team at high school, and he and Derry used to buddy it around all the time. He must be a junior in college by now, I thought. He was looking at Derry with an expression I couldn't quite place, but disliked. Contempt, pity, hate, All three? Why? Because Derry was standing there representing all of us, and maybe Paul felt only contempt and pity and hate for greasers? Derry hadn't moved a muscle or changed expression, but you could see he hated Paul now. It wasn't only jealousy. Derry had a right to be jealous. He was ashamed to be on our side, ashamed to be seen with the Bromley Boys, Shepard's gang, maybe even us. Nobody realized it but me and Soda. It didn't matter to anyone but me and Soda. That's stupid, I thought swiftly. They've both come here to fight, and they're both supposed to be smarter than that. What difference does a side make? Then Paul said, I'll take you, and something like a smile crossed Derry's face. I knew Derry had thought he could take Paul any time, but that was 2 or 3 years ago. What if Paul was better now? I swallowed. Neither one of my brothers had ever been beaten in a fight, but I wasn't exactly itching for someone to break the record.